Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam. Hilchos Gezela va'aveda prakim Aleph Beis Gimel. Just saying that we discovered through Habacher Hatamim J.K. Fishman this gewaldige Rambam from Harav Evan Yisrael, from Harav Steinsaltz, the Koran Rambam. And going forward, I'm going to be learning out of this Rambam. This is also a nice piece of information because there are always differences in Girsa'is, including in some of what we're going to be learning today. So I know that many of the people here are using the phenomenal Chayenu publication. Every now and then, please chime in if the wordings are not exactly in my Rambam the way it is in yours. And a big Yasher Koyach Chevra, this is a work that, what can I tell you? I have been using the Rambam La'am. For me, this is better than the Rambam La'am. Mamish Gavaldik. Not only do you have whenever needed, a little bit of a perush, but there's also phenomenal, quick in the bottom of every single halacha. He brings down what the Shulchan Aruch paskins, what the Ramah paskins. So here we go. Hilchos Gezela and Avela. Before we give the intro to the first chapter, let's just go with the opening. Yesh bechlolon sheva mitzvos. 2 are mitzvahs aseh, 5 mitzvahs lois aseh, and V'zehu pratim. Number 1, shaloi ligzoil, not to rob. That Rambam already explained in Hilchos Geneva, the difference between Geneva and Gezela. Gezela is when the robber has no shame of man. He does so in public. Number 2, shaloi la'ashoik, not to withhold money that's owed, as we'll explain. Number 3, shaloi lachbid, not to covet. And number 4, shaloi lesavas, not to desire. And we'll see that there is a difference between coveting and desiring. Number 5, that if, God forbid, a person did an act of gezela, so you have the positive commandment, lahashav gezela. Number 6, shelo yis'alei min ha'aveda, don't make believe, don't ignore something that is lost, not dealing with it, pick it up and do the mitzvah. And what is the mitzvah? Number 7, lahashav ha'aveda, to actually return when it's possible, ubir mitzvahs elu, the prakim elu, beginning with Peder Krishin. Now, Peder Krishin is going to deal with the prohibition both of gezel, of robbery, and of oishek, of withholding money that's owed. It's going to deal with the mitzvah of returning that which was robbed, if God forbid it was robbed. We're going to learn in this Pedic also about the isur both of chimud and of taiva, right? Coveting in English and desiring. We'll see how they are different. We're going to learn about the chumrah of gezel. We're going to learn about a gazlan that is going to do tshuva and a takana that they made to facilitate this tshuva. Peder Krishin has 13 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Says the Rambam, Kol hagoizel es chaveri b'shava pruta, very similar to the way that Rambam opened up in Hilchos Geneva. If a person robbed a pruta or more, according to pasuk in Kedoshim leisigzel, and weiter ve'ein loikin alav zem. Why? Because the lav could be corrected by the fulfillment of a positive commandment. And what's the positive commandment? A pasuk in Vayikra v'heshiv esag zela asher gazel. And zu mitzvahs aseh. I just want to laha'ir that when the Rambam began in Hilchos Geneva, that if a person ganvis, right, he also won't get malchus. The words in the Rambam there is Shaharei nitan letashlumin. Here the words are nitkoy la'aseh. Now, I'm here. Now we'll say those words again. Filu saraf hagzel. Even if a person stole the item itself, which means that item cannot be returned. It's no longer nitkoy la'aseh. Still, you're not going to get malchus. Sharehu chayiv l'shalom domel. And that now we're quoting the same words we had over there in Hilchos Geneva. It's interesting. We're not calling that a explicit mitzvah aseh. The mitzvah aseh is to return the item itself. But if you can, you still have to pay back. And that in itself already justifies why ein loikenov halacha base. Now, va'asur ligzerl kol shehu din Torah. In other words, even though the Rambam says that the lav is when you do a shava pruta, we said this when we learned Hilchos Geneva, based on the Rambam's psak, like Rabbi Zajac, that chatzi shir is asur min haTorah. That's the way we learn pshat in the Rambam. Therefore, Therefore, it's also midoiraisa any amount. And afilu goy oived avodah zara also legazloi, also laashkoi, to withhold money that is owed to him, and the in gizaloi oyashakoi, the obligation, like by a yid, lahavdil by a goy is yachazir. Halacha gimel ezehu goizel, define the robber zeh lekeach mamen ha'adam, and you do it b'chaskam, kigon, you chop something from his hands. This is in public. Against his ratzain, the natal kela misham. Talk about right? You use something against the will of the owners. All right, you're going into his property and you're eating his produce. That's called a gazlin, king and shenemar. Now the Rambam's raya is going to be vayigzol esachanis miyat hamitzvi. Literally, it was a story where someone robbed a spear from the hands of a mitzvi. The pasuk there uses the words vayigzol, and that is a raya that we use the word gezela by metaltalin as we use it also. Sheyarad l'toich sadeu va'achal peiroi seah. No matter if it's connected to karka, we're going to use the word gezela or va'achal peiroi seah. You took peiros. I think it's only all about metaltalin, all about metaltalin. But actually, we're going to see later that karka itself is ein an exelos. We'll get to that. Okay, so gezela is taking something shaloi b'ritzayin haba in public. Halacha daled, what's the meaning of an oishek? Withholding any type of money that you owe. Withholding means I didn't come into my domain be'isr, like gezela. But now that it's in my domain, I'm chayiv to give it. If I'm not giving it, that's also a prohibition. All right, that is where this is different than gezela. Gezela had entered your domain against the ratzin. Here it went with the ratzin. Uvekiven shetavu. Now that the owner is asking for his money back, I give you an example. A person works for someone else. He didn't take anything, but now when he's chayiv to pay, he withholds the money if he does that. Whether there was a loan, and now we're asking for payment, or you entrusted an article in the hands of a custodian, or schiras, who tavai. And now, by the way, the Rambam is hinting in between the lines. If my article itself, the end, is in your property, I have the right to get it if I could, but I can't. I need for you to give it to me, and you're not. That is also a pasuk in Kedoshim loisa'ashoik es rei'echam. Halacha hey kol hagoizel. If a person violated the first isur of this pedic, chayiv lahachzir es hagzela atzma. Rule number one is the item itself must be returned. Shenemar v'heshev es hagzela asher gozel. This is the asay. However, if you lost that article, that will be a big important theme of this chapter. Of the next chapter, let's give an example of a shinoi. A person stole eitzim and they fashioned the eitzim into a kelim. They completely changed the block of wood. You stole threads, you made it into a beged. I'm saying this in contrast to other changes that are natural. Shearing the wool, a baby giving birth, that's much less of a change. You change the item. Now, you don't give that back. You didn't steal that. Shalom damel. Now you have to give back its value. And by the way, since it was done, there is no kefil. But give back the kedah. Bein shahoida, bifi atzmai, bein shumal of Edom shagazal, in both cases, by gezela, hadei zechayv l'shalom hakerem bovad. Now, if you stole a beam and you did not change the beam, the Rambam wants to emphasize, even though you built it into a building, that's not a shinoi beguf of the beam. You have to give back the beam. It might mean that you have to take your building apart, so be it. That says demolish your building. However, this is the takana. Takanas meirosh, or the Rambam doesn't use that words over here. The Rambam calls it takanas hashavim, the takana to facilitate tshuva. That since you already built it into a building, sheyonoisen as domeo, for you not to be mafsid your building. V'chein kol kayotze b'zeh. And I'm just reading here again. We're learning the Rambam from Harav Adin Even Yisrael. Harav Steinsaltz, he quotes that the Ramah paskins that if a person steals land, even though halachically land cannot be stolen, and he built buildings on the land, they did not make takonas hashavim. Here you have to demolish the buildings to give the land back the way you took it. Well, it's not always, but here by metaltalin, that's the way it works. Back inside. Afilu gazel koina, and you built it into and you made it into a sukkah. Even over here, no, it's a guy won't do tshuva. Let him give back the beam after his sukkah. No, he shouldn't even feel that pressure. He should give the money back right away. But medvaram amurim that he was asked to give it back during Yom Tiv. We're not going to tell him to take it apart. And we're speaking about a sukkah, which in most cases, they didn't extend this takonas hashavim here. And we mentioned that Rambam already said, halacha base, that also ligzel kol shehu din toida. So the violation is there. You can't say the lav, it's mitzat chatzi shir. The positive commandment is not shy. And now let's break this down. A person steals 3 bundles of vegetables. Each one is worth 1 pruta. Collectively, he stole 3. However, prior to him returning it, the price of vegetables went down. All 3 bundles are only worth 2 prutas. All 3 are, and what is even worse, he already gave back to him. Now, guys, when he stole, every one was worth a pruta. Now you can argue, now the final bundle is not worth a pruta. Does he have a mitzvah to give it back? So that Rambam paskins, yes. Why? So the chiyuv, the mitzvah, was chal on the bundle. It's not removed just because the price went down. However, gozel shtaim shavis prutas means from the outset every bundle is worth a half a pruta, and he gave back 1. That's what he did. From the outset, 1 bundle was never worth a pruta. Gzeila yeshkan. However, mitzvahs hoshev hagzeila indeed ein kan. Okay. It's more than now the chiddush over here is that when he stole these 2 bundles, he had an obligation to return the theft. He had the obligation because both together were worth a pruta. Nevertheless, since that bundle, the chefza was never worth 1. If he gave back 1, not 2, now he no longer is chayiv to give back the second. Halacha zayin. Another detail of where do you have to give the gezela back. So if a person was victimized in a city, so the din is the victim, the guy from whom the item was robbed, has the permission like this. If he wants, let him take it. And by the way, sometimes, you know what? Eitz Toiva, take it. Who says this guy is going to give it back to you later? But if he wants, he can tell him, Eini noitel el bayishu. Why? Shema te'ones mimeni kan. And guys, just remember one thing, that the moment money or anything that was stolen is returned, the gazlan is not chayiv and achrayis. Prior to returning it, the gazlan is chayiv even ba'oinus to pay back at least its value. You understand? So it's in the benefit of the victim to be able to tell him, give it back to me in the city. And then if he doesn't receive it, and the same thing is also b'demei gezela, right? Same thing. Even if from the outset you cannot return the item itself, but you chayv b'tashlumen. Chayv b'tashlumen. The nigzal can say, you stole it to me from the city. Give it back to me. City is a safer place, at least theoretically. Depends what city you live in. Halacha ches. Now another gavaldik halacha. And the gazlan is doing tshuva. He's pashet ashamed to tell the victim, I'm giving back money that I robbed from you. By the way, we're not speaking about Geneva. Geneva Avada, he can be ashamed because Geneva, it could be the guy doesn't even know who is the Ganav. Even though he knows who the Gazlan is. People are Halavai, Halavai people have shame. So you know how he returns it? He reimburses it to him by being mavliyat. Let's say Reuven stole from Shimon and he owes him $100. What happens if Reuven has another debt with Shimon? Not an honest debt, another $100. Reuven says, here's $200. Shimon understands. Why are you giving me $200? It's for the just he never said it. So the din is Yatza Gavaldik. And the point will be, Yatza would mean, guys, what over Yatza, that if someone right away, the money is lost, if he received it, the Gazlan fulfilled their obligation. Now, that is when he gave it to him in his hand. Another thing. What happens if the Gazlan returns, he doesn't notify the owner? What we just said right now, if you remember, we learned his dinner by Geneva. Does he have to notify him? We learned it over Shabbos. Does he not have to notify him? Here we're saying he has to give it to him. The victim has to be aware that he got the money. He doesn't have to hear, it's from the Gezel. So, Reuven gazeled from Shimon. Shimon has a wallet. Remember the whole sugya we learned by Avedis that people are constantly mamashmesh on the pockets to see if there's money. That's by a wallet that's full. That's going to be applied over here. So he gave back the hechzel lekisa sheyesh b'mois. There's a wallet that Shimon has. There's already coins in it, which is good because there we have a chazaka that the owner of a wallet every now and then is going to be checking the wallet. Reuven, the Gazlan, is going to put the money in there. Also yatsa because sha'adam asil mashmesh b'kisa b'chol sham and the guy Shimon, he's going to count his wallet. Think about it. He counted. He knew that there's only 10 coins. Mitamal, he'll find 20 coins. Based on the rule we learned in the beginning of this halacha, you don't have to have the Gazlan telling him, I am giving it back. We only need for the victim to know that he has it. He knows. And because uminyan shaloi midas, an accounting that's made without being informed, like over here, he doesn't know where the money came from, but he knows that it's there, is poite. That's this din, is sufficient. That is only because of this rule that a person is mamashmesh bekisei kol shah. Bekisei doesn't mean an empty wallet; it means a full wallet, or at least today a wallet has credit cards. There's something where he has your license. If you have stam a pouch that's empty, you know it's empty. Who says you're going to check it? And therefore, beautiful. You don't have to tell him that I'm giving back the gazela, but he has to know that it was returned. And if the only way of letting him know is by telling him I returned it, that's what you need to do.
Is it now, he going to check it at some point? He's going to check it.
But Kevin, we don't know when that's going to happen. It's possible that if a person has an empty wallet, they'll check it once a year. You don't know. There's no more chazak. Halacha 9. Now do that. Where people say the Aseres HaDibros is recorded 2 times in the Chumash. Parshas Yisroi, Parshas was Chanan, and there are certain nuances of a difference. One will be in the 10th commandment, is it loy sachmet or loy sisava? And in English, don't covet, don't desire. It's the same thing. It's mamish not the same thing. So now we're going to learn what chimud means halachically. I know it sounds like chomed, desire, and taiva. It sounds the same, but it's different. Kol hachomed avdoi oy amosoi oy beisoi vekelav shal chaveda. Coveting in English. That helps you. It's
coveting with the comma.
Thank you. That makes a big difference. Coveting. Or I'm from Boston. Anyway, or you have an item. Shimon owns an item that if Shimon would want, he can sell it. We're not speaking about his. Okay. And Reuven. Coveting means not stam, a desire in your heart. He took an action. What was the action? He put pressure. Sometimes pressure doesn't only mean that you asked. You got Shimon's friends to ask with you, and they requested, and you bought it from him. See, what's amazing here is you're not stealing it. You paid for it. You paid a lot of money. But the nekuda will be is ve'ein loiken alav zeh Because she'ein boy maisa, you're not going to get malchus if it never came to maisa. You have to actually take it. Now, take it doesn't mean stealing it, buying it, but paying for it. So that juxtaposition tells us that whenever the Torah uses the words chimud, it means a type of chimud that v'lakachtolach.
So 1 second, anytime we want to buy something from your friend, you're over this isser. I like your jacket, Rabbi. Can I buy your jacket?
And if I say no, that's fine. If I say no, but if you desire it and you make tremendous pressures on me, that's exactly what it is. Happens today with houses. So with the house. If you want a jacket like mine, this is Paul Smith with no shotness. I'm just saying I have a shout out for him. It's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive, but I haven't shotness checked anyways, but it's gavaldic. Because the suits that are a bit more expensive is a disaster. People have to know that. Anyways, coming back over here. So you can get something like, now taiva is without a mice. So you won't be like it because b'chlal it's a lav she'ein bei mice. So now halacha yud kol hamesava beisoy or ishtoi or kelev shel chaverei v'chol chayotze behem mishar devarim she'efshar lo l'tnoisim mimenu kiven shechishek beliboy. Once he begins to conspire in his heart, how will I go about it? Hey, means his heart became completely invested in how to do it. And taiva is elabalev. And lahoyer that we ashreino that we learn, we should be learning good. Alter Rebbe's Torah by Tanya. What is that? What's one of the big points that Alter Rebbe makes with Habeinani is that there is a certain desire that goes up in the heart or in the mind for that you're not even held accountable for, because you have a nefesh habahamis. Where is this in? Even in the Avedas of Loisa Surah Achrei Levavchem, if you, that's his words here, you give continuity to those thoughts. You see, mamash, it's meduik in the lashon of the Rambam. Because if I look at my friend's house and I have, wow, I want that house. If I have that thought, I was not over on anything yet. Because if you're not a tzaddik, you cannot control the thoughts that go into your minds. But if I'm going to start to chishav beliba, how will I get it from him? It's already this afterthought. It's the second thought. It's the third thought. That's the issue. And what? You get it? Beautiful.
Could you end up with malchus for Leisachma?
No. Leisachma. Oh, no, I'm sorry. For Leisachma, you get malchus. Yeah. The Rambam wanted to point out that in Loikin Alavzeh, if there is no maisa, you have to want and buy it. Or once again, in other words, he's pointing out over here, is pshat, you never get malchus for leisachmoid. The way he teaches in the Rabbi Steinsaltz is that you will get malchus. I'm just reading his words. It's not clear. No, it's the ikid is chimud. Chimud means you are pressuring him. You're doing something. That's words. In other words, he's writing that if you did buy it, you'll get malchus. Okay, halacha yudalef, and one is connected to the other. Begins with taiva. Again, the first step is the animal souls we're not responsible for. But if we're gonna be mamshech that thought, we're gonna dwell on the taiva, that will bring to chimud. Right? Chimud means you're buying it. You're buying it. Now, chimud can also bring to gazel, because especially if you offer, you thought about it, you want it, and you offered a lot of money. The guy's still not selling it. Sometimes you're going to resort to gzela. As it says in Micha, and then it says right afterwards, vigazal. And more than that, what could lead, not will lead, it could lead to if the guy who's being robbed will stand up, he's going to try to prevent him from being robbed, then you might come even to shvichas damim, which is exactly what happened with the mice of Achav and Navais, right? Achav, the Melech and Shomron, with his wicked wife Izebel. So they wanted to have the kerem of Navais. Navais didn't want to sell it. What a terrible story. So they got Edim, and the Edim testified falsely. They were bribed that he was blasphemed, the Oibishter, and against the king, and he was put to death, and they stole his property. All of that began because the king had everything in the world, but one vineyard he didn't have. He wanted that. Oh, Now, halacha yud beis olamadato shamasava over belavecha. V'hakon doiver shisava shehivtze be'olam over b'akoshmem over b'shnei lavin. That's why it says loy sachman and loy sasava, and the im gazal over b'shloisha lavin. Oh, now by the way, you can gazel, you could steal without being over on all three. You understand? I know in Brazil, I mean, it's not a robber. Some people they rob, they don't even take what they rob from you. They're violent people. That's also a gazlan. We're speaking about if someone had a chemda, had a taiva, and a chemda, and a conspiracy, and he planned, and then he stole that, then he's over on all three. And the final halacha yud gimel, kol hagoyzel as chaveru shavaprut. Even though it's, so to say, there's such a small amount. Ki'ilu noitel nishmasa mimenu. It's a horrible thing when a person feels victimized. And Shenemar, as it says, that Kain Orchos Kol Voitseya Batza, that this is the ways, right, of those who are greedy. That's the tribe of Voitseya Batza. And their greediness leads them to theft, obviously, as Nefesh Ba'alav Yikach. Not even though externally, right, in the Haniglis Lanu, what did the guy do? He was greedy and he took the property of the other. But the trader writes the emes. The victim didn't only lose his property; he lost his neshama. Afal pikein im loy hoysa hagzela kayemes. Rotza gazlan lasis tshuva. Ubama eila vehechzer de hagzela. So now the Rambam is concluding with another takana. Listen to this takana. You have to know how to word this. So on one hand, gezela, it's the worst thing. It's, on some level you took away your soul. But now, guys, so get penalized. Minimally, Dovi, pay back. If a person came on their own to pay back, listen to these words. Takanas chachamim hi she'ein mekabelin mimenu. Wow. Elo oizren oisa yomoichelin loi. They never made this takana if the item is kayemes. We learned in the beginning of the chapter another takana. If the item is kayemes, but it's built into a building, that's something else. Give back the money. Here, the item is not kayemes. You're coming to give back the money. There's a virtue to be moichelin. Why? In other words, doing tshuva, gezela is both a sin ben adam lamakim. It's a sin ben adam lachaveira. If a person not everyone can afford to pay back their gezelas. It's very difficult. God forbid if a person, stole a lot, robbed a lot. So there's an inyan to be moichel. The chol hamakabel mimenu the mei gezela. Listen to these words. Ein ruach chachamim noicha hemenu. Wow, the chachamim don't even like that. Now I want to read again using this the Rambam that I just began to use. So he writes that according to the Shulchan Aruch and to the Ramah, only from a gazlan mefursam, that all of his livelihood came from gezela or from ribis, there is where they made the takana not to be makabel, because he owes everyone a lot of money. It's almost like he can't do tshuva. That's the only the place where you apply it. Okay? Another thing. So first of all, that's number one. That's a big difference. The way the Rambam doesn't word it that way. That means that according to the Ramah, we go follow the Ramah Ashkenazim with the Sfat and follow the Shulchan Aruch. If a guy is a gazlan, he's not a professional gazlan. He got to it. He stole from you one time. He stole from you one thing. Then no one told you not to take the money. Take the money. It's only if this guy, everything that he owns is one big zayla. Another din that the Ramah paskins, that whenever we say that ein ruach hachamim noicha himenu is only if he came on his own. The moment there was a pressure, there was a demand for him to pay, then take the money. This is only for someone who came on their own. In other words, it sounds like you wouldn't have gotten the money. They came on their own. Huh? What does it mean they came on their own? In other words, without him coming, I would never get the money back. Even though he was a gazlan, which means I know who he is. He's a mafia. Imagine guy. This guy that did a Ponzi scheme, right? Very good example. That he's a gazlan. So you're saying that's a great example. To not ask for your money back? One second. $700,000. If this guy now was caught, and was taken to court, you understand? And there's pressure on him. Take the money. That's what the Ramah is saying. If the guy was in the middle of a Ponzi scheme and no one knew about it yet, he would have gotten away with it. By the way, a Ponzi scheme, I think, is a ganaf that Rambam writes is l'choyde by gzeila. I don't know if he writes the same thing by a ganaf.
Well, here he's taking your money from you. It's open, you know. Who
Yeah. No. He did not rob me. He took it. It's called a geneva. Ponzi scheme is a geneva because he was hiding. He only got the money because I thought I'm making an investment. He tricked me. We are a little bit lenient by a gazlan. A gazlan doesn't have to pay kefil because even though the gazlan has no fear of God, at least he has no fear of man. Gazlan. Okay, let's leave it at that. It's a big thing. Today's second chapter is Perek Sheni. And I know, Yakir, I think it was Friday. Thursday or Friday, we had a very similar chapter by Geneva, and it was like a very humbling. I hope that the more we learn, for sure, Yagato Motsasa. Let's begin like this. First of all, the Gazlan, like we mentioned, if the item is here, he must give back the item. That's the positive commandment. What happens if there's a shinui? So there is a concept that the Gazlan can be coined that item with a shinui, as we'll define, with Yush. Always he'll have to give back the value, putting aside what we learned at the end of Perek Rishon. But the item itself could be acquired. We're going to learn more than that. What happens if the item becomes increases in value? There's a shvach. Who does that go to? We're going to have to learn about that. And here again, was there a shinoi? Was there yush? Was the item always still belonging to the owner? Then you can say if there's an increase in value, it's increased to the owner. When it comes to increase, also there's many differences. Did it increase by itself? Right? Did you invest money to make the value change? All of that will be negeya as to exactly how do you need to return. Perek Sheni has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Let's go through this slow. Mitoevish yourself will really chap this well. Halacha Aleph. Hagzela shaloi nishtanos. It remains unchanged. Elo harei kamoy shahais. Rambam writes it like both sides. It is the first klal in this chapter is that Rambam says that Yush itself, without anything else, does not make the Gazlan acquired. And when we say, because we're going to learn later about the Yush and Shinoi Reshus, Shinoi Reshus doesn't mean it went from the Reshus of the owner into the Reshus of the Gazlan, because then every Gazlan is a Shinoi Reshus. He didn't sell it to a third party. Now, even if the Gazlan died, and therefore it went down the Yad Banav, that's not called a Shinoi Reshus. That's very important. Okay? The Yerusha means, by definition, you don't make a kinyan for Yerusha. The children are in the place of their father. Guys, remember this. Yush is not kind. So Yush doesn't affect that. Now let me go. What happens if there was a shinoi? Another rule. If there was a shinoi, we'll get to that in a moment more. There was some sort of inherent change in the item. Even if there was no Yush, Yush does nothing. Only shinoi does it. Kana oisa b'shinoi. We're beginning with Torah law. And now kana oisa b'shinoi doesn't mean, God forbid, the Gazlan is scot free. Now we go back to what we learned in Perek Rishon. If you can't give back the item, in our case, not because you lost it, because it's yours, give back the value. And now another detail. And we're going to come back a lot into that. Many times there's a price fluctuation. Now, guys, remember this. The din zed din toiruhu. Halacha based, we learned two dinim, guys. Din number one is yush without a shinoi reshus. Without a shinoi in the item, does not take it away from its owner. Any shinoi in the item, even without the yush, it makes it belonging, makes it property of the Gazlan. This is the entitled. As it says, and what does that mean? Which means it did not change. Then Meshal and Meshal Dovi, even with Yush. You learn both dinim from this. On the other hand, if it's not the way it was, Nishtanas, guys, even without Yush, then only Mishalom the Mel. Nisyashu haba olam imeno. V'loi nishtanes. Let me give you an example, guys. This is going to be about. So the owners gave up Piyush. The owners gave up. There was no Shinui. Let me tell you, we're speaking. This will be one example. Important. A person stole a pata. Listen to what I'm saying. When he stole the pata, you see, you need that. It's not so simple. When he stole the pata was not pregnant. It became pregnant biyad hagazlan and viyolda before any attempt to fix. So the din is kana hagazlim kol hashevach sheishbicha achar yush. Now we're going to hack in yush. It's this the yeladim over here belong to whom? They belong to the gazlan. The Eina Mishalem Elek Shasak Zela, which means, in my example, Dovi, he only gives back the cow. Now, 1 second. We said that Yush itself doesn't do anything, right? So the vart is, Yush doesn't take the para away from the domain of the owner. The example that I gave was, there was a shvach without a shinu, because an animal, female, getting pregnant, giving birth, it's not called a shinu. And I'm saying dafke, you stole it before it was pregnant. So all of that is a shevach that made no shinu in the cow. You were talking not kind of the cow. But since there was yush, the gazlan is kind of the end, and even this, because you can argue, 1 second, that's maybe you were trying to say that. Hello, if the cow belongs to the nigzal, so why wouldn't the children be his? Who cares? Yush. The yush doesn't affect. The answer is, and the vart again will be, don't forget, the nigzal is getting back exactly what was taken from. I want to give you another example to apply this thing. Okay? Let's say the same thing, Dovi. The gazlan stole a cow, not pregnant. It became pregnant while it was biyat hagazlan. Now he's giving it back. Why is he giving it back, the cow? Because you have to give it back, even though there was yush. There was no shinu rishus. But now the animal is pregnant, which means when I stole the animal, that was $100. A pregnant animal is worth $110. You give him back the animal and you get back the $10.
Rabbi,
and you take it from the nigzal.
Quick question. If you stole a cow that was worth 100,
yes,
and then the value went up just because of the.
We're going to get there soon. Wait. Everything is written out in another halakha.
Okay.
I want to go. I remember Friday, I also felt not fully the shlemus. I want this to be, let's just stay focused on these cases because the Rambam Seder is mamish amazing. It's godly.
Oh, wait,
now,
general question. Doesn't this encourage people to become gazlans as opposed to do Geneva? Because now they know all they have to do is.
So let me say, first of all, if you want to make a chart, which I did not see, maybe there's yet a better Rambam, not a Rambam, to compare these dinim with Geneva, to see where they are same, where they're not. I did not make such a chart. So I don't think it will make a difference. You can ask your question, Kevin. You're making a good point. A Ganav has to pay kefil. Gazlan never pays kefil. So doesn't that motivate someone to be a Gazlan? No, because people are afraid to be a Gazlan, because people are afraid of other people. People don't want to be known to be Gazlan. Okay, let's go back. Halacha Gimel. Now we're adding Shinui Rishus. Remember, don't forget. The point was that, of course, Shinui Rishus. It was B'Rishus HaNigzal. Now it's B'Rishus HaGazlan. That's not Shinui Rishus. Even if the Gazlan dies, Yerusha, same Rishus. But Machra Gazlan, it now Shinui Rishus. Or, let me see, sold it, he gave it b'matana. Even though there is no inherent shinoi in the gzela. Eina chayzeres ba'atzma miyad loikeach. This is called, my friends, remember these words. Yush and shinoi rishus. Yush without shinoi rishus doesn't have you, doesn't make a difference. Yush and shinoi rishus. So the loikeach doesn't have to give it back. And the Rambam paskins, whether the yush happened before the mechira unesina, bein la'ach mechira unesina, now kana loikeach beyush and shinui rishus. Now let's go to Danny's case. Halacha Dal. No yush. The item has to go back. Very important. You need both. You need shinui reshus. No, it's like shinui the guf that Rambam paskin already in halacha aleph. Even without yush, the gazlan is koine. If you took a piece of wood and you made it into a keli, the gazlan acquired gives back the value. That's why I was emphasizing by the shvach was pregnant giving birth. That's not called a shinu.
You need the yush.
To go back, yush itself without shinui does not affect a change of ownership. A change in the item affects a change in ownership. Pregnant without yush, so there's a din that the shvach. You have to give the examples that I gave. When you stole it before pregnant, and now it became pregnant, that shvach belongs with yush. That Rambam says with yush. Yeah. Achar yush. Good. Now, halacha now. Hagoizel v'yishbiach. There's an increase in value. Now that's then. Now we're getting to it. And now umachar or hoidish lifnei yush. That's important. And what did we say? That shvach, again, Dovi could hear what you said. Shvach belongs to the gazlan after yush. Here, the shvach happened before yush. Mashi yishbiach hoirish, umashi yishbiach machar, and v'kana halikeach o yoirish es hashvach. And now, the noitel the mei hashvach mi nigzol umachzer hagzela. Mamish gewaldig. The choizer hanigzel the noitel the mei hashvach min hagazlan. Sharei loinus yoish. In other words, he gets it back. The gazlan is only zoichem and the shvach after yush. But if there was a sale, that's the word. If there was a sale dovi or even Yerusha, that will be the exception. That now, whoever has it now is koine the shvach, even though there was no yush. That's another din. That's halacha dal. Since not only shvach and a change. Now they acquired it. Once they acquired it, Dovi, what happens now? The shvach belongs to the ganef. But the item is still be'en. And the item, even with shinui reshus, like by the case of machar, if there was no yush and shinui reshus, the item has to go back to the owner. You understand? But the owner doesn't own the shvach.
For example, Rabbi?
Can you please give a simple case for an example?
Yeah. Yes, I stole a cow. The cow became pregnant. We paskin before that since there was no yush, the shvach belongs to me, to the gazlan. But now the shvach belongs to the gazlan if there was yush. There's no yush yet. But now I sold the pregnant cow. I stole a cow worth 100.
He translates here. He says that he causes it to increase, meaning that the gazlan did something. It's like he fattened up the cow, and then it became worth more.
I don't think so. Yeah, okay, listen to me. I stole a cow that's worth 100. I'm the gazlan. There was no yush. The halacha now would be is I have to give this cow back to the owner with the value of the increase. But now there's another thing that if I sold the cow, now the shvach no longer belongs to the original owner. But there's a challenge because since the item did not have an inherent shinui, the item has to go back to the owner. Even though there was a shinui reshus, but there's no yush. So now the cow goes back. So what happens is that the owner gets it back. But the noitel the mei hashvach min hanigzol. You get it? The guy that gives it back now is entitled to that $100. He has to give back the cow. V'choizer hanigzol v'noitel b'mei hashvach min hagazlan. The nigzol gets the keep, gets the money. The loikeach gets to keep the money of the shvach. But noitel the shvach min nigzol. What has to be fixed over here? What has to be fixed is that he only gets the mei shvach. What's the owner only gets the $100 from the loikeach. He gets his item back. So he had to give $100. Now he gets to take the mei shvach from the gazlan. In other words, what the Rambam is saying is that the loikeach gets to keep the shvach, even though there was no yush. Why? Because there was a change of reshus. Shina reshus also allows for the person who's now owning the animal to keep the shvach. In a shbiach, same concept. If the shvach happened later and there was no yush, but here we also allow for the current owner to keep the shvach, but he doesn't get to keep the animal. In my case of the pregnant, because when there's no yush, the animal pregnant has to go back. But the noitel shvach, the victim has to give the $100.
Why not? He just fattened up the cow, and now it's worth $120 instead of $100. Now he's giving back a cow that's
because
worth
if I'm
money.
not mistaken, we're going to have to either in this chapter or in the next chapter a halacha of money that was invested. That's different. Danny, there is a difference. Let's not get into that right now. Halacha hey.
I know, but it looks like in the Chayyim, he did the thing.
Now it's Rabbi Steinsaltz. Let's go right there. I have a different Rambam today. Okay. Now, they didn't make this takon. You know, it's here we go back to the rule that we learned before. What was the rule that we learned before? That when does the current holder of the animal keep the shvach? If there was yush. If there's no yush, he doesn't get to keep it. It means the owner takes his pregnant animal back. Then it's a suffix. So how much? So right now the loikeach can the kana hashvach means the loikeach. You know what that would mean? It means that he gets to keep the shvach. He's called a muhzak. The owner has to give him money. That's not out of money. But the imtafas hanigzal without giving money for the shvach ain't in the yadai because it went through a guy. Halacha vav. Kfar beyarnu. Now we're going back to what we learned in halacha base. Shagzela sheishbicha achar yush. Okay, the yush does make a difference. Achar yush. Who does it belong to? To the gazlan, or a shvach that happened after there was a shinoi. And what did we learn? That after there is a shinoi, whoever has it acquired it. Then the shvach belongs to the gazlan, and that's part of takanas hashavim. And that is now. Let me go back to my pregnant mashal. Which is a bigger chiddush, because in the case that the Gabbai was trying to hack in over here, which was not yet the place, there when the Gazlan invested money, you can argue, I get it, why he gets to keep it. We're using examples where he didn't do any out of pocket, but that's the halacha. The halacha is that the Gazlan gets to keep it. Ketzad Gozel part of an asabra etzloi. Bein sheyolda koydem shotuvebedin bein adayin lo yolda. Or Gazel Rachel, and when the Gazlan took the Shepsela, it had no hair. And while it was under his domain, Vinita'ana Etzla got ungepackt, it grew a lot of hair. In both of these cases, you know what, Ski Dovi, help up. Yush, you need Yush. When there was Yush, that was the Takanas Hashavim, Mishalim Kshas Agzela. Let me tell you what the Rambam means to say with this, guys. The owner gets his animal back. Make no mistake. The owner takes, you know why? Because there wasn't a shinui in the animal proper. Shevach is not a shinui. But if the animal was stolen when it was worth 100, my exact part is worth 100 yakir. Now it became pregnant. Now it's worth 110. The nigzal has to give him $100. That's the meaning of Misham Shagazel. then the Gizois Haveladis remains with the Gazlan. Now the Rambam is writing what I just spoke out before. It's not money. The animal itself goes back to the owner, because only guys when you have Yush and Shini Rishus, which you didn't have over here. Here you only have the Yush. So the animal belongs to the owner. Shamim loy, but the animal has to be given back. Okay, good. Baruch Hashem. Halacha is zayin. It's good, but it's late. Gazal Pazal Beres. He already stole a pregnant cow. $110. Now, what did we learn? Now, an animal that gave birth, Dovi, is worth, let's say the mother is going to be worth 100 and the baby is going to be worth 20. That's called a shvach. Or if you stole a rachel, that's already tu'una. And there's yush. Because of halacha based takanas hashavim, the shvach will belong to the gazla. So now what? Now let me tell you the chap over here. What are you going to say? Simple. Just give back the cow. The gazlan gets to keep the fetus, the baby. No. I'll tell you why that's not good enough. Because a cow that's not pregnant is worth 100. Here, the gazlan stole the cow when it was pregnant, worth 110. Now the cow gave birth. The cow is back to 100. So when the gazlan gets back his cow, the nigzal gets back his cow, the nigzal is short $10. The baby is worth $20. The robber has to pay those $10. The robber won't give him the behemoth. The robber won't give him the wool. He'll give him part of the wool. Now, guys, this whole thing in halacha beis that the shvach belongs to the gazlan, that's because there was yush. But if it was lifnei yush, or koydem shenishtana yolda, or gezaza, then hadei hagizois v'havolodei shel ba'alim, v'afal pishin es abra netana b'yad gazlan. Everything goes back to the nigzal because that was key. Hoyel v'loy nisyashu haba'alim. Number one, and there was no inherent change. The that Rambam wants to tell you that an animal going from non-pregnant to pregnant is not a shinoi. None of this is called a shinoi, right? Shinoi is koina, and we learned in the halacha aleph, shinoi din toira is koina even without iyur. That's not a shinoi. All of it happened with a shuz b'lei adayin, and therefore afal pisha gazlan chayiv b'onoseh doesn't matter. He's chayiv, but now that the nigzal is getting it back, he gets it all back. Clear. Halacha gonna figazal. And this guy, this bandit, the higdish. And then the tabach achar shenisiyashu haba'olam, which means that it was effective. Right? That's what we learned before. So harei b'reshus hagazlan misha shehigdisha bilvad kidei shelo yehei chayta niska. So let me remind everyone the following. All right, this guy who stole Geneva or Gazela, after the Gazlan, the Gatzadik, was Magdashit and the owners had Yush, he shechted the animal outside the Beis HaMikdash. Now, the din should be that shechting the animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, the kachim is effective. If there's Yush, the kachim is effective. If the kachim is affected, shechting kachim achutz is chayv karas. The Rambam says that he had yush after higdish, right? The tabach achar, the higdish achar as well. Okay, we learned that it's time to know that you can be magdish it even before yush. They made it as if there's yush. We say that the gazlan owns the animal. Why does he own the animal? Because there was a shinoi. There was a shinoi rishus. You get it? There was a shinoi rishus and yush. When did that shinoi rishus happen? So we say that it's as if the shinoi happened misha for after he was magdashit.
What is the shinoi?
It was a shinoi rishus. If we would say that it becomes his mishas agzela, Very good. If it would become, guys, the Gazlans, Bishas Gezela, and then there was Shvach, who does the Shvach belong to? It belongs to the Gazlan. That's what we keep on learning. We don't allow for it to be considered at any point, the Gazlans, for him to benefit from the Shvach. Therefore, B'chol Bal D'Sevig is a sell, Mishas Geneva At Shas Hegdish, doesn't go to the Nigzal. I'm sorry, doesn't stay b'yad HaGazlan, which is normally the din, Takonas HaShavim. We don't allow for that to happen. Because of this guy's chutzpah that he was magdashit and he did shchita b'chutz, to such a sinner, we don't make a Takonas HaShavim, and we consider all of the Shevach belongs to the Nigzal. Laba'ala means to the Nigzal. That's the exception. That what? That we make a difference between before or after Yush. Going back to what Danny mentioned before, if there was a Shevach after Yush, we say that the Gazlan gets to keep it, Takanas HaShavim, with the exception when he was Magdashit and then he shechted it. That's B'Shevach Haba Me'elov. It happened by itself. Like the examples we keep on giving. An animal had hair, then you cut the hair off, or you had a baby. But in other words, Danny, that's for you. Where are you? That means that even though there wasn't Yush yet, and what did we say until now? If there is no Yush, Dovi, then the owner, the Nigzal, gets to keep the Shvach. Not so simple. But he invested the money. So Noitel Mena Nigzal Shavach Hapitum. It was something he gets back. He invested money to make the animal fat. That money he gets back, even though there was no Yush. And even though when there's no Yush, we say that the animal goes back to the owner, the Shavach goes back to the owner. Very important that the value of his investment will go back to the Gazlan. Halacha Yud. See, Danny, you got that. The halacha test was for you. I don't know what the Chayena wrote before. Could be he fit it in, or could be he got it right or got it wrong. Let's go back. Halacha Yud. Now let's go into a shinoi. Now, guys, 1 second. Let's take a step back. Right, we're different. Shinoi means there was a shinoi in the item itself, and we learned in halacha aleph that if there was nishtanis biyad hagazlan, even without Yush Dovi, kana oisa, the Gazlan is kind. The Gazlan was kind. Let's define shinoi. Shinoi achayis libriyas. There's a change, but the change is not long lasting. Ain't a shinoi. And therefore, the Gazlan was not kind of it. The Gazlan has to give it back. If there was Yush, then at least he gets to keep the Shevach. Ketzat, Goizel Eitzim, you steal wood, the Dibek Oisam, B'masmerim, you connect them together with nails and you make out a box out of it. That's a good example. It says the Rambam Eino Shinoi. Because Shaharei Efshel Lefarak Oisam, and then Behem Chayzer and Luchas Keshahayu. We're going to go through many examples of this. On Halacha Yudal. Gazal offer.
Creation of the actual wood or the cow that got pregnant, and there's no mention for that at all. Mitzad a nigzal.
One more time, Yakir.
I wanted to say that there is a depreciation mitzad a pregnant cow or the wood that was nailed together, and there is no mentioning of it at all. Mitzad a nigzal.
Okay, so here's the point that when Yakir, we'll learn this in the next chapter. When the item itself doesn't have to go back to the owners, then the victim, the nigzal, says, pay me how much it was worth b'shas hagzela. That's the big ikar. That will be the beginning of the third chapter. But whenever the item itself has to go back, there is a certain amount of depreciation that the victim is going to lose. You're making a good point. You're making a good observation. Correct. And a chanami. But he loses it. The nigzal, at least, but he'll get his wood back. Now, halach yidalef, another example. If the Gazlan steals offer and he turns it into a brick, do you know that you can make a brick back into offer? It's a shinoi that could go back libriyasa. Not by itself, but it could go back. Loikana. And this loikana is important. Why is it important? Because if the brick now has a shvach. Don't forget, that's the whole word. The moment there was a shinui be'etzem, and then the shvach, even without yush, the gazlan is koine, not over here. Another example, similar. A person steals a block of metal and he puts a form into it. Loikana, because you can melt down that form. In contrast,
Rabbi, in all these cases, can the original owner chop the brick or chop the box, just keep it as is because it's his item?
Of course, that's what we're saying. And Beis Din will chop it and more. And if there was a shevach, he'll get it back when there's no yush. Now, guys, I know there are two different gersois. I have the words b'shafan. I know that I have another Rambam, Pardas Hamelach, the Rebbe's Rambam. There he writes usirafan. I don't know what it says in the Chayenu. Suraf, different. So he burnt it, guys, not burning it to destroy it. He made a shinoi. Now it's that you can't undo that. Or you cut it, or you carved it, you understand? You make the indentations, you make it into a keli. You can't fix that. Or you gazal semar and you dyed it, right? Or niptsoi velibna, you combed it and you white and you bleached it. Or if a person stole threads and made it into a beggar, that's called the shinui beguf. Or if a person stole the venas, you made it into dust. Don't tell me that you can make the dust into a that's called a panam chadashis. That in that direction. It's different. Or avanim, and this guy smoothed it out. Or ma'ois, and he melted it. That's called a shina b'yadoim. You can undo it. Yeah, that's called something new. She'im yaso oisem ois acheres panam chalosh is saying the chen chol chayotze was, and therefore, guys, halka. That's the word. That's today's chapter halacha aleph yakir. Whenever a gazlan steals, simple. If there's a shinoi in that item no longer goes back to the owner. But mainly, if the shinoi had a shevach, it goes to the gazlan. He owes the owner kshas agzel. Halacha yud gim. Hagoisel mois, yishenois, old coins, and the gazlan polished them, makes them look like new. Now he's saying, "Oh, I made them new." No, like kana. Because that's called the shinoi. You know, it's more than the box that you can take apart. Because just use the coins, it's going to go back to the way it was. That's called kana. You can polish them, panam chadashis. Shemichadashois and panam chadashis saying, this is important. Gazal dekel nuchavur ksasai, a date palm, and you cut it, loikana. Now that's already a big chiddush. Why loikana? It has to do with how do people refer to it. If people refer to the word, they call this dekel, whether it's connected. If they just cut it off the ground without making the wood into a little shtikalach, they will still use the word dekel. That's the nakuda. They use the same word like kana. But if you cut the wood into little shtikalach, then kana. You know, here the name of it will define whether it's called different. Halacha yudalit, gazal koides gedolos, and you made them into katanas. This is called koides dovi. That's called koides. Same name, like kana. Ktsatzim luchais. If you made it into a box. Now, before it was a wood, now it's called a box. If people use a different name, kana, gazalulav, v'hifran kana ha'alam, it's a different name. It was called a lulav, this is called leaves. If a person steals leaves and they made it into a hufya, or I know there's another girsa, hufya, a broom, it's a different name, leaves, broom, kana, gazal tlen, it becomes an ayel, egel v'nasa shoed, that's called the shinui b'yodav v'kano. Different name, the name is the shinui. And now, that's the vart. Once he acquired it, he has to give money. When? Mishas Agzela. Afalpi, Shaloi Nisyashu Abalim. That's this chapter, Halacha Aleph, that didn't Torah, guys. That if there is a Shinoi, even though there's no Yush, the Gazlan is kaina, Halacha Tazvav, Gazal Kili Vishibroi. So you remember the whole Sudya Shaman Linizakin, Nebach? Not over here. This will be like by Geneva. You pay the whole thing. Pay the money. Now, you get to keep the broken pieces to the betterment of the owner. Now, if the owner wants the broken pieces, final halacha gzela shaloi nishtana. Nothing happened to it other than the market changed. Inflation. V'hukra. What did we learn in Halacha Aleph? If there's no shinui, even with yush, goes back to the owner. We learned that if there's yush and shevach, so that's why I was giving examples. Danny Dafka, shevach means it gave a baby, it had wool. That's called shevach. There we say, Takonas Hashavim, the shevach belongs. That's not this. But just because the market became more expensive, Hashem helped. I think I feel that at least Yakir, that better than what we learned in Geneva. And today you have to chop it. We have to move the third chapter today, which is the third chapter of Gezela and Aveda. Now we're going to go much more into this last din that we learned in Pedek Sheni of what would happen if the price went up. We're gonna dive into this a lot more if there's a fluctuation in the price based on the principles that we learned in Pedek Sheni. We're gonna learn other than if someone makes use of someone else's property without their reshus. We're gonna see how to monetize that, and we're gonna it's connected. If I'm a shomer, I'm the shomer. I was asked to guard something. I was never given right to use it. I'm not a shoyel. The moment I lifted it, bekavana, to use it for me, that is called I was sholeach yad. And as we'll see, the sholeach yad right away becomes chayv even ba'oinus. What happens if I was given an item and I'm denying I was ever given it? Also, different types of thefts. If a person is going to take an item, not gezela, I borrowed it without your knowledge. Well, no, all different types of what halacha will or will not consider the gzela. Pedek Shlishi also has 16 halachas. Let's begin with halacha aleph. Or like we mentioned, that we just learned at the end, we learned all of the klalim in Pedek Sheni. The last thing we learned about was a price fluctuation. We said that a price fluctuation, if there is no shinui be'etzem, even though that sometimes the shvach, takanas hashavim, belongs to the gazlan, not in this case. Let's dive into this. Halacha aleph. While he sold it, it was worth a dinar. Now it's worth 4 dinar, 400%. Now the gazlan broke it. And I want to repeat a klal that we said in the previous chapter. The klal is a gazlan, when he has to pay, he pays kshas hagzela. Once you break it, that's a shino. You broke it. Now you got to pay the money. The question is, how much do you have to pay? 1 or 4? What a great question. One can erroneously think that since the rule is that a gazlan has to pay when he doesn't give back the be'en, kishas hagzela, when he stole it, it was only worth 1. We don't say this over here because he broke it. When you break it, it's like you did another act of gzela. You made a shinoi. When you made the shinoi, it was worth 4. If he broke it, or he drank it, or he sold it, he gave it to a gift after it got more expensive, it's like he did 2 acts of theft. When he took it, and now he did another act of theft. If he would have left it here, then you would have to give back the barrel, like we said in the last chapter, that even though it has a greater value, no takonas hashavim, you would have given back it to the nigzal worth 4. You broke it, you pay all of the 4. But if it broke by itself, or it got lost, this is amazing. You didn't do it. What was your act of sin when you robbed it? The rule is that you're mishalem kshas hagzelam. Moiridik. Now mishalem din kshas hagzelam.
Once it was stolen. How do you prove whether it was an accident or
that's so Yakir is making a good point. Many dinim in the Torah, based on the rule Yakir of Amoitze Mechavedo Olavaraya, there's no doubt that if the gazlan is going to taina, it broke by itself, there's nothing you can do. I know that. But if I get Aiden, the gazlan cannot say, no. Yeah, now that I'm not giving it back be'en, and the rule is gazlan and mishalman, kishas hagazela, it was worth 1. No, you broke it. That's another 2 gazelas. Halacha base. The there's something called deflation. For those people who don't own houses, halavai for all of you guys. So my houses will become cheaper. So now what? This klal, again, the thing is not the end, that you have to be mishalem k'shas hagazela. Here you're going to pay the price, mishalem abok k'shas hagazela, because that's the klal. And here we say that whether you drank it, whether it happened by itself, I know, makes no difference. We go back to the ikr. You pay k'shas hagazela. Now, halacha gimel, hagoizel choisel, you stole a basket. In the basket, this is a big klal. You had 50 tomatim. By me, it says chamishim. I don't know what you have in your chayenus, maybe chamisha. It doesn't make a difference. The same concept. Okay. And now, if you would have sold the whole thing in one go, wholesale, you would get 9. If you would sell everyone separately, you would get 10. Now I want to know, if the thing is not the end and you have to pay back, how do you evaluate it? You know what? We had a similar din yakir by Geneva. Where do we have? I found a place in the beginning in Peder Krishin. No, not in Peder Krishin. In Hilchas Geneva, we had a scenario where I damaged produce that was growing on your field, that they were relatively lenient. That 1 in 60, if you remember. You don't pay the retail. You get to pay a lesser amount. No, you view it.
And it makes no difference how the Ganef sold it or the Gazlan sold it. Meaning, let's say he sold it one by one.
The Gazlan didn't sell it. He ruined it. But you know what, Danny, you're right. I like what you're saying. In other words, let's go. Yiyush, very good. Yiyush and Shinadishus makes the Gazlan own it. Now he owes the money. Once he owes the money, Kshasa Gazela. Very good. The only times we're machmir, you got to pay the more expensive price. Now, that was in Hilchas Niskimam and Pedig Dalet. That is where we learned it, not in Geneva. Hilchas Niskimam and Pedig Dalet, Halacha Yud Gimel, that was the din. That kol behema shizika peiros mechubarim nisharin ma shizika b'shish. Okay. Halacha Dalet. Goes al behemon. Now, just like we had on the previous chapter, it got more valuable by itself. Let's go in the normal direction. The animal got old, or the animal got weak. Kachash v'kachash. It's you can't change that. Now, by me in the Rabbi Steinsaltz, it says goes al abanim v'hiskino. I think that's a mistake. I don't know if we have it in the Chayenu. I want you to know, guys, an evet like karkas einu nigzelos. So it won't be the same thing. Oy, kochash u'kachash, she'ena yochal lachzoy. Kegoin, chaloyim, she'ela merefuas to Allah. You can't heal. If a person stole a matbeya and now the matbeya got split, well, you know what? A new king, vayakam el chadash, the old coinage, b'chal, is not worth what it used to be worth. Yeah, you can melt it down, but it lost its official coinage value. Oy, shegazal pedos, and it rotted, all of them rotted, or yayin and all of it got the vinegar. We'll see the all in a moment. Then, guys, hareza kimisha gazal keli yushuvarai. Amazing. And now, weiter. No, it's the moment there's this type of shinoi, you called it something else. It's a different thing. If there's a shinoi, then the gazlon does not give it back the end. If he doesn't give it back the end, he has to give back the value. And the rule is pay kshas hagzela. More money here. More money. Now, guys, I know, again, I'm learning it. I don't know where the Rambam puts in Gazal Avadim V'Iskin. It's somewhere. It was a printer mistake, I think, by the Rabbi Steinsaltz. But it's still worse in another place. Only or Truma V'Nitmeis. Now, Truma V'Nitmeis, we're going in Ingan. One is when you can't say that the goof had a shinoi. They don't have a real shinoi because in another place it's still worth money. Now we're going into another din, that if there is a shinoi, but only a halachic shinoi, not a physical shinoi. Tumantara, you can't see at the end. Or if you stole chametz, avla pesach. Even though it's very important that we're speaking about, you can't even have hana from that chametz. I know, but it's not a a devaluation that's gashmi. It's a halachic devaluation. And then they're also my friends. It becomes also badna. For whatever reason, you can't bring it anymore on the mizbeach halachically, or a yotzeli yisakal because the animal killed a human being. So in all of these cases, that's not called a shinoi. That's not called a shinoi enough. And you know what? Whenever there's no shinoi, that's what Yakir was mentioning before with the wood in the box. It's worth less. If there isn't this type of real shinoi, the Gazlan tells the Nixal, there's no shinoi. When there's no shinoi, even if there was yiush, no shinoi rishus, it belongs to the Nixal. Very good. Mamash, what you pointed out.
And he doesn't have to pay?
Huh?
He doesn't have to pay anything?
Nothing, because it's the end.
So the shor has to get stoned.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter.
No. Yeah. That I can tell only if he's at least it's here. He has it here. It's worth nothing, but Begashmi it has the same value. I'm thinking. I have to remember why he kivu mitzasan. Can you say Harishal Chalafanech? Why not at least have to pay for that? Or come to me. Okay. The moment you have an actual shinoi, what did we say? Yakir shinoi, the gazlan is koina. The moment the gazlan is koina, he's not koina it now. The moment the victim doesn't get back, he gets back the value, kshas hagzela. And therefore, lefika, now that we established that if it gets lost, the gazlan will have to pay back, even though halachically it has no worth. And what's the general then if I owe you money, God forbid, I deny, but I take an oath. That was the shvu in the end of Vayikra. And then I do tshuva, keren chayvish and hasham elois, I'll have to pay, which is a chiddush. Because what you would think, why would I have to pay anything? It has no halachic value. Anything that the way it is now, I take a could have said hadeshel chalafanech, this gazlan. But since if it would get lost, it's going to be mechayev mikashas hagzela. It's considered something that has enough halachic shavias that if I deny it and I'm moida, that din that we didn't learn yet, but we learned chumash. We should remember from chumash. I'm still going to be chayev. Let's go back. Now new topic, and I'm using it. The nos olav masa and now the gazlan the tshuva, since there's no shinoi. Even if there's yush, he gives back the animal. First of all, he was over on sigzal. Now he had benefit. If he wouldn't have stolen the animal, he would have to rent. But he figured out a way how to get services done, and everything is good. Then and even what people are going to ask, guys, remember a big klal that ain't done in dini knosses b'chutz la'aretz. This is a knas that the Chachamim said even in chutz la'aretz. V'shomin es haschar o yashevach sheishbiach b'behema u'mishal l'nigzal. No, like if I slept with my animal, how much schar would I have to pay to get an animal to schlep my stuff? Shevach means if I use your cow to be chodesh my field. Interestingly, I don't pay how much I would have paid for an animal to be chodesh because that act of charisha actually increased value in my field. Mistama, the increase in value is more than the money of the rental. I have to pay that. It's a big knas. Mishal nix. Allah chazai. Hatoikev abdi shel chaveri v'asuvem Allah. Same theme. And during that time, here we didn't even give a knas. Why didn't give a knas? Because an eved, that's for us, right? That the moment we lose discipline, it's a gefarliche thing. It gets worse. You have to keep it in check. It's noyach la'adam shliyavat l'avdoi. Now, of course, if the master wanted the eved at that time, then shalom like a player. But we don't make a knas here because there was a benefit to the owner. Next case, A guy chaps a boat and he does malach, and again he gives the boat back. So now we have to know something else. At least for the first time for Yakir, wear and tear. That was he was asking. If the owner of the boat doesn't rent out his boat, which is very important, there is a wear and tear. There is a wear and tear. More than the animal plowing, which halachically there's no wear and tear, the boat gets used. Shaman kamo pachas of yishalom. Some epis happens to the boat. But if the owner is asoy l'schar, which means that he was planning to pay rent. He was planning to pay the rent. His gazela was not to pay. I know that you charged $100 a day. So the owners get to either get the schar. What happens if he ended up devaluing it to $120? Then the owner gets whatever is more advantageous because he did a shaloi b'reshus. But gazel, then all he has to give is the pchas.
Rabbi, why is he saying that there was damages? What if he just took the boat and rented it out or used it, but there was no damages?
Then he doesn't have to pay anything. That's exactly what we're saying. Unless the owner normally would rent out the boat during that time. If the owner, Danny, it'll be enough community. If the owner rents out the boat.
It seems like it's mixing two things. There's damages and then there's you used it without permission.
Correct.
And got benefit from it.
Correct. Happens to be that if this article is meant to be rented out, then sometimes the money of the rental is more than the wear and tear. Pay the more amount. You understand? If this guy was planning to gazel it, then all you have to do is the wear and tear, right? Alochatas. And now we're going to go to the same concept in property. It happens a lot. Someone squats, and then they say, you were not there anyways. We remember that, but it's very limited when we say. First nukud is, if that property, if this guy always Airbnbs it out, you'll never get away with it. Even though you have no client in the calendar. If the owner has this as an income property, you're there for a day. What's the price for a day? The question is, if the owner doesn't rent it out, even though this guy would have had to pay rent. What about wear and tear? No wear and tear. I think there's something about a boat. Even though this guy didn't even need it. He had his own house. If I go into your real estate, that's for you, a rental property, I never get away. Because that's called chisrei mamon. Halacha yud. Now comes the interesting halacha. Guys, I have material. I was dyeing it white. I'm giving you an example. That means I had schoida. I already paid the $5 for the white dye. You came and you dyed it another dye without my knowledge. So there's two things over here. Let me tell you the two things. First of all, which means that I always lose out. If the dye devalued it, how did the dye devalue it? That for me, white, you would have been sold now for $100. You made it blue. Who asked you to make it blue? Blue now is only $10 less. First, you paid me for that. Now the question is, I have another time. I invested white dye. You covered it. Aside of the fact that now it's less expensive, I want you to pay me for the dye that was a bracha levatala now. Not always, because since you give it back to me with the dye, that's the question. So we say that because the Gazlan tells the Nixal, Rabbi Yid, I got it. You would have sold it for more money in your color. I painted it without your permission. I ruined it. Okay, it's worth less. I'll pay you that difference. But for me to, on top of that, compensate you for the white, I'm giving you back the white. My blue is on top of your white. That's the suffix. Now, if the Nixal chops that white, he keeps it. Because that's a boy deloiv. Now, weiter. Halacha Yudal, all about taking things without permission. Hashleach yad bepikadon. Means you gave me something as a shomer. I'm your shomer. I'm not allowed to use it. Shomer chinam, shomer sacher. I'm not a soicher. I'm not a shoyel. I can't use it. The moment I took it, I made hagbah bekavana to use it. I am a gazlan. The big difference is shomer chinam, shomer sacher, both pater and ansem. A gazlan is chayv and achrayis. Hashalech yad ba'pikoden. And here there's a chiddush, even though normally the rule is ein shlichus ledvar avela. By shaleach yad, it's even through a shliach. It happens through my son, my evet, or my shliach. They are my extension, meaning I become now a gazlan, and b'meila then it's chayv ba'an nasav. V'nasa gzeira b'reshus again call a gazlan. If I had in mind the shleach yad b'pikadon, but I didn't do it yet, and a chayv b'achri yusay. Until I did something. Now, doing something, as the Rambam will say, doesn't mean I'm using it. It means I lift it. Literally, when I extended my hand, but I picked it up. Not even though I moved it on my own property. Doesn't matter. I was going to use your ladder later, but I moved it. I picked it up to move it. Not that I used it, I picked it up. Now, if I picked it up a barrel, now here's the shaila. Shaila is here. I was not planning to be shaleach yad on the whole barrel. I was only planning to take a revius. So it's clear that if the barrel breaks ba'inus, even a shomer sacher, ba'inus will be pater. Is he pater for the whole barrel? He's going to be chayav for the revius. The question is he chayav for the whole barrel? So the din is l'schayev be'onsea afal pishalinato, because we view liquid as one unit. So even though I was only going to take it a vias, I lifted it up. I acquired the whole barrel. Aval l'migbias akis. A kiss is filled with coins. I wasn't going to take all of the 100 dinners. I was going to take only one. That's already different. That's a suffix in the schayv. And whenever there's a suffix, as we learned, you know, both ways. If the guy chaps, he gets to keep it. And if he took some of the produce, because he only took some. But there's something interesting, which is that whenever a lot of produce is together, whenever a lot of wine is together, it stays fresher longer. When you take a little bit away, you already open up the possibility for everything else to get ruined. But the im nifsat ashar, because you took it, chai bakel. Hitas achavias, guys, means you did not lift it. It's amazing. If I only hit up, I did not lift it. So whatever I took, I'm chayiv. I'm a gazlan. But whatever I didn't, I was not shaleach yad. Then nishbara achinat liba mekayma and a chayla mashanata. We're speaking about nishbara ba'inus. But if I tilted it and I took out a little bit, but now everything else became vinegar, the owner can claim, you know what, it became vinegar because you took some wine out. If you never would have taken any wine out, none of it would have become vinegar. As the make kulak shas halacha yudalid hakoyfer bepikoden bebezdin another din, guys. I did not even touch it. A new din. I denied ever getting it. What's the din? I become a gazlan. Shalichus yad demands of me to use it. If I deny it in the basin, it's a big thing. You never gave it to me. What's the din? I'm a kofer hakel. So now I'm a gazlan. Next, the halacha tezvav. Hashoyel shaloi midas haba. Not midas haba. Guys, I want you to know something, that a shoyel, the normal borrower with reshus, he's chayiv ba'insin right away, even before he uses it. Remember that. That's the halacha. A shoyel shaloi midas haba, which has a din of a gazlan, just to know the din, when does he become a gazlan? When he uses it. See, again, kofer is different. Kofer, it's in his reshus, he's denying it, he's chayiv by the kfira. Here, Hashosh is a gazlan. But like we just said, he's a gazlan from when he starts to use it. or biyad avdai. By the way, Eved has a din of a cotton. Even though the cotton gave permission, Yaakov, it's worth nothing. Who's the cotton taking permission? That's called the shoy shalom midas. V'nasa b'reshusay, v'neschay b'nasav, at shiachzenenu le'ba'alim. Lefikach, im echzira la cotton shoy b'yodi, oy la eved v'avim even ishbar, chayv l'shalim. Because that's not called a hachazorah. V'chein chol chayoytze b'zeh. In any din, you're giving back, even though the
he took it
owner
originally from the
allowed it to be in
cotton?
the hand of the cotton, huh?
You gave it back to exactly where you took it from.
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. No, it's I have the right to allow my son to use my stuff, my minor son, but he doesn't have the autonomy to give it, to lend it. So once the guy has a din of a gazlan, there's a rule that you have to give it back. You have to give it back to the adult. Giving it back to a child is worth nothing. We learned that in Hilchos Geneva. Final halacha to Zion. Hachoytev mashkem miyad haloiva. Shaloi b'reshus beis din. Amazing. You know what, guys? I'm a malva. You're the loiva. Now, there are sometimes I'm only going to give you the money after you give me the mashkin. Sometimes I gave you the loan, but I want a mashkin. I want to tell you two dinim. Din number one is the lender can never take the mashkin. Beis din can take it. And even Beis din, the shliach Beis din, can never go into the house. Can't grab a mashkin. But he thinks he's just. You owe me money. You promised me a mashkin. You never gave it. If I'm acting as the shliach Beis din, again, there's restrictions. I can't grab it in your house, but out of your house I could. Because it says in the Torah, Gewaldig.
Thank you.
Continue.